One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. You mentioned earlier Chancellor Severud's background and how athletics may be a little outside his comfort zone. What have you learned about the Chancellor? And he's only been at Syracuse now for a handful of years, but what have you learned about how he operates as a leader and what a new AD could expect from him as a partner, really trying to build an athletic department as of course the quote unquote front porch of the university?
Sure. So, I think he is someone because he doesn't have that tremendous athletic background. I think he's somebody who an athletic director would enjoy working for if they're kind of willing to do it themselves and comfortable making those decisions and comfortable really making it their own. I think he probably views the athletic director as someone who can operate independently to a large extent, just because he's not going to be able to offer that person much guidance as to how it works. And, he'll show up at the key fundraising events and he'll do what he needs to do, but he's certainly not going to offer many suggestions on what needs to be done. He is an academic and a scholar first and foremost. So I think, the worry about NCAA compliance and having a background there, I think it's probably a little bit more than lip service with him. I think it's something that he probably cares pretty passionately about. And Syracuse does. Mike Tirico's on the board of trustees. There's a sports committee on the board of trustees. And I think those people kind of, he has a tight inner circle, but I think the opinions of those people matter. Sean McDonough, who's a good friend of Mike Tirico, has already kind of publicly said Nick Caparelli, the executive for Under Armour, would be his pick, and they shouldn't go any further. Now, I don't think Sean McDonough gets to pick the athletic director, and neither does Mike Tirico, but I also think that's probably a voice that Kent Severud is going to at least listen to, given kind of his lack of knowledge in that area.
What about the idea that the new AD should have Syracuse roots? Do you think there's a contingent buying into that belief who can help make this decision?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the fan base or a big portion of the fan base feels that way. I mean, I think that's why you have a huge contingent that's gotten behind Pete Sala, who's a longtime facilities expert here. He's done an incredible job operating the Carrier Dome and keeping that dome afloat. It's, I think, the only one that was operational in the country for a while that didn't collapse. So he's phenomenal in that regard. But he's not necessarily kind of the modern day athletic director. He doesn't have a great background in fundraising. He'd be kind of brand new to that. So the main reason you would pick him is because he's just exceptionally loyal, and he knows Syracuse and he knows the people that are around. But his resume doesn't scream athletic director and athletic administration like you think of now. Joe Manhertz at Duke is a former fundraiser here. We've heard his name a lot. Caparelli, again, is a former Syracuse football graduate assistant. So that's part of the appeal to him. My personal opinion is that's not mandatory. As long as the person knows how to fundraise and can kind of hit the ground running in that area. I personally don't feel like you need to have a Syracuse guy here. I think that's, a little bit short-sighted. But there's certainly a significant portion of the fan base and some trustees, I presume, that, feels spurned by Mark Coyle and that would be very much comforted by having, someone who, quote, bleeds orange, unquote, in charge of the athletic department here.
As we sit here on June the 1st, what's your best guess on when this closes up?
It's hard to guess. Syracuse has said that they want somebody in place before the start of the academic year. I think that's probably a pretty good guess. Kent Severud, the chancellor here, has taken some grief recently more from the faculty, mostly from the faculty and from some students for, making decisions just solely with kind of his brain trust and the board of trustees, and without kind of getting this consensus, without getting much of a consensus from the university community. So I think that, that slows down the time frame. I think he's going to make sure that everybody that's on this committee gets a chance to meet all the candidates. I think they're going to do multiple interviews with those people. I think they're going to take their time and make sure that, it doesn't and can't be portrayed as one person making a decision for the campus, because he's fairly new here, and it's the first pushback he's gotten from the faculty. But if you read kind of the press releases coming from the university, it's an image that he's certainly aware of. And with the Carrier Dome renovation and some other renovations that are going on campus, he kind of can't afford to be portrayed as somebody who's just doing what they want. He needs to be portrayed as a consensus builder. So I think that probably slows the time frame down and probably does make that kind of start of the fall semester a pretty reasonable bet.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.